To talk about the Iran war from the Israeli perspective, joining us now live from Efrat, Israel, is Matthew Faraci, the founder of Torch QRF, a rapid response organization that exposes atrocities against faith communities and protects religious liberty in regions of severe persecution. So, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. You're in Israel as we speak, and I just want to mention you actually witnessed from your doorstep an Iranian missile headed for Israel in the sky. We actually have that video. We'll bring it up in just a moment. But just describe for us, what are you seeing? What does the situation look like there on the ground?
So the situation here is I would say it's subtly quiet at the moment. One of the challenges that people face is in the first couple of days, the missiles were coming fast and furious, hot and heavy, constantly. And now they're more sporadic. The reason that we think that for the sporadic nature, we've talked to a couple experts here in Israel, is that the Iranians had the original missiles armed and programmed to be heading towards Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and major cities in the beginning of the war. And now, because the United States and Israel have knocked out so many missile sites, now the theory is that you have lower command people in charge, let's say at missile trucks throughout Iran. They have to put the missiles together. They have to program them to head somewhere, and their leadership's been cut off. So we're seeing the results of that. Today is the first day in Israel that we've seen an actual loosening of restrictions. So previous to today, you were supposed to stay in your house. The businesses were not open. Today, we except grocery stores and hospitals. Today, we're starting to see slowly restaurants and other things opening up. It does not mean by any means we're out of the woods. Iran has fired hundreds of drones at Israel that we know and hundreds of missiles. So Israel is still very much on high alert, but we are seeing a lessening of the intensity of the air bombardment.
So, Matt, can I just follow up on that? You said restrictions are looser now. Can you paint a picture for us in detail? What do Israeli cities and streets look like before, and what does it look like right now?
Well, let me give you a good example. Yesterday, I was driving through Jerusalem, and the traffic was pretty light, but then an air raid siren went off. So what happens? Some people will pull their cars off to the right and lay on the ground. There are traffic tunnels. Some people will pull into the tunnels. It's pretty much controlled chaos. And the reason I say controlled chaos is Israelis, believe it or not, are used to this. So in the United States, if something like this happened, everything would shut down and it would kind of be a bit of a mess. Here in Israel, it's a country that unfortunately is used to war. It's used to conflict. It's used to missiles being fired into its territory. And so kind of like Britain during World War II, during the Battle of Britain, when people just sort of had a stiff upper lip and got in their bomb shelters and then went and resumed normal life. That's what you see here in Israel. There's reports of a bar mitzvah that actually took place in a bomb shelter. There's also something that Ambassador Huckabee tweeted about, a dating app that actually developed just since the beginning of the war, so singles can find each other in the bomb shelters. So Israelis are unbelievably resilient. And also the entire country right now is upbeat. People know that this is what needs to happen. They're incredibly grateful for the partnership from President Trump in the United States. And they know that the Band-Aid has to be ripped off from this existential threat that is Iran. So people in the country are not downtrodden at all. They're very, very upbeat right now.
And what's behind this upbeat emotion? Because you described people have to quickly reach shelters, right? So for our viewers who may not understand, could you describe that for us? What is behind this emotion?
Well, in a word, God. This is a nation that believes in God, and this is a nation that believes that God has been part of its destiny from the beginning, and God's destiny and the destiny of the Jewish people in the Bible comes from history and is going into the future. And so people know that they're part of this great story that continues. In fact, Israel just passed the holiday of Purim. Purim is from the Bible in the book of Esther, where it explains. And by the way, the two same countries are big actors in that story, Persia, Iran, and Israel. And in that story, Haman tries to wipe out the Jewish people and then God comes to the aid of the Jewish people and saves them. And people were literally reading the story of Esther from their air raid shelters this Purim here in Israel, just shaking their heads and saying, what a blessing that we live in biblical times and that we get to become and continue to be part of this story. And it's something that's hard to understand if you're not in Israel, but it's a purely spiritual thing in the Holy Land, in a very spiritual country.
Okay, Matt, I know we're on a tight timeline here, so I just have one more question
Sure.
for you. And we just learned President Trump told Axios that in an interview that he needs to be personally involved in selecting Iran's next leader. Just your final comments on this.
Thank God. One of the problems that we had during the Bush administration, if your viewers will recall, is that the Americans were, and particularly people like Paul Bremer, were warned that if they disbanded the Iraqi army was going to go under and become the next insurgents. What you've seen President Trump and Secretary Rubio do in Venezuela, you're probably going to see a similar approach in Iran. They're cutting the head off the snake, but the people that have the civil service jobs, the police jobs, and the other jobs, likely they're going to keep them temporarily in power until they can slowly transition them to something else. This is much like what the United States did in Nazi Germany after World War II in the rebuilding. And so what the president is signaling is that this is not going to be a forever war. We're not going to turn this thing into an insurgency. The United States is going to have, we broke it. We own it. We're going to fix it. And we're going to make sure that there's a stable situation and that we don't have a hostile Iran. We have the opposite. So again, President Trump's approval rating in Israel is probably hovering around 427% on a scale of 1 to 100.
That's incredible, Matt. Really very much appreciate you talking to us today. Please stay safe. Thank you so much.
Anytime.